Hi there, this is Christian Dye from Latitude West Financial, and I'm joined by Ryan Runte. And we're here to continue our conversation for new families and help them with some financial planning. So we will leave questions to the end. If everybody could just keep your microphones on mute, as well as your questions till the end. So what we want to do is to remind people that today is an educational session. It's not to promote the buying or not buying of stocks or real estate. All of these are just for educational purposes, but we do encourage that you reach out to an advisor such as ourselves if you wanted to learn more. So what we're doing today is understanding investments as well as figuring out how to prepare for starting a new family, as well as our tricky real estate market as to what is going on inside of it. So I thought we would dive right in here. And my first question is, what is the biggest mistake individuals and couples make when starting their financial lives? So I want to start with this concept of rich versus poor thinking. So the difference is, I want you to think of a thermostat. Now, with thermostat, might be set to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and if it's too hot outside, then the air conditioner kicks in. And the reason why the air conditioner kicks in is because it's trying to get you back to 72. And if it's really, really cold outside, then the heater's kicked in. Why? It's trying to get you back to 72. So financial thinking is much the same. If you're a very, very poor financial thinker, then it doesn't matter if you get a raise at work or if you get an inheritance. Because of those poor habits, you're eventually going to just lose all that money anyway. If you're a rich financial thinker, it doesn't matter if you become broke all of a sudden, or if the market turns, or if you lose your job, or if your business collapses. Because you've got that mindset, you can get the money back. You can get back to success. If you're a big spender, if you're a high income spender, I have a lot of clients who are, lawyers, physicians, dentists, they make high income. But if they've got bad habits of high spending, then sometimes their income sometimes goes up by 30% or 50% or even doubles, but they still fall back into the same traps and they still don't end up with very much money. So what we want to do is we want to adjust our financial thinking. Otherwise all the strategies I'm giving you today, they're not going to be much use anyway. So I find that is one of the first mistakes that people make, is they have poor financial thinking. And sometimes as a couple, you have poor financial thinking as a couple. You get extra money, you spend it right away, as opposed to investing it. So one of the things I encourage couples to do is to avoid the deadly disease of affluenza. And affluenza is also known as keeping up with the Jones. And I think in today's society, it's easy to try to, with Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and seeing what other people are doing and seeing the cars they're buying and seeing the houses that they're getting themselves into. You want to keep up with the Jones, but what's the problem with trying to keep up with the Jones? Well, Jones are going broke. Consumer debt is on the rise, and a lot of people can't afford, the lifestyles that they already created. They're taking on more and more consumer debt. So one of the other mistakes is trying to compare yourself and trying to outdo everybody else. It's a very, very dangerous game, because there's always somebody making more, somebody with a fancier car, somebody with a fancier house. So what are some ways that we can combat this? So the first one I always say is to figure out what your income ratio is. Your income ratio is incredibly important. So the poor thinkers are always concerned about how much money they're making, but rich thinkers are more concerned about how much money they're taking home. So that's the income ratio. So what is this ratio? It's the expenses divided by your income. Okay, expenses divided by income. So the lower this number is, the better. So if you have an income ratio of 99%, well, you're not going to become very, very wealthy. It means all of your wealth is going towards your expenses. You only have 1% left over to invest. So if your income ratio is 60%, that's fantastic. That means you have 40% to invest. And investment could mean paying down loans. Investment could be, buying a rental property. Investment could be investing in the stock market. There are a lot of different ways to invest, but it's things that are either minimizing debt or maximizing assets. So that's my first advice to young couples who are starting out. Be careful of these traps and figure out how you're going to keep monitoring your income ratio. So what is the forecast for Vancouver housing market? That's typically going to soak up the majority of our money. And what I want to do is I want to start with this statistic over here. So the Fraser Valley real estate, I've got this based off of January of 2023. And here you could see it broken into categories of detached house, townhouses, and condos. And you notice how it has gone up, and it peaked around February 2022, and then it started to make this decline. And when it made this decline, this is kind of the pocket we're in right now. How long do we stay in there? Time only knows. But the one thing with Vancouver real estate is, if the tides turn, they usually turn quite quickly. This is one of the reasons why I brought Ryan in, is because, any data that I get is a month old. It's at least 1 month old. So, if this says that we're going down, we could have already turned the tides already. So I lean on Ryan to join us here. He's from Stonehouse Realty, and he's going to let us know what is going on right now. So Ryan, are you there?
I'm there. Good evening. Yeah, so it is still down. We had probably one of our slowest Januaries over the last 10 years. We have noticed the last couple of weeks, though, there's been a bit of an uptick, and we're actually seeing multiple offers again in some segments. So even though it's way slower than it was last year, there really isn't much inventory. So we're starting to see an uptick, especially like Burnaby, for example. I've seen multiple offers for condos under 800,000. Langley, I'm seeing multiple offers for townhomes under 900,000. So even though I think this year we're probably going to still end up down overall, but of course, keep in mind the previous 2 years we had quite a bit of an increase in value.
Got it. So I got a couple questions here, Ryan. So would you say it is not a great time to buy because of the low inventory, and to wait until there's more inventory?
I think it's actually a pretty good time to buy because in most cases, what we're seeing is you're able to negotiate if it's, not a multiple offer, which most still aren't. So you're able to negotiate, you're able to get some money off of the price, and then time to do your due diligence. Last year everything was multiple offers and you're kind of deciding on the spot. So I think it's a good time, even though the inventory is low, I think it's a good time because you're just not as competitive overall. So I would say it's going to change very quickly too when the rates start to go the other way, which is hard to predict, but most are saying end of this year or early next year, the rates will start to come down again. And that's when the market will probably get pretty heated.
Got it. Okay. So, Ryan, what are some real estate considerations when you're first starting a family, in your opinion? What do you think that young family should be thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, my kids now are 9 and 11, and I know some of the stuff that we probably should have done earlier is being closer to family. I'm in Vancouver now, and my mother-in-law is in my basement suite, pros and cons there. But initially, when we were in Port Moody, we did find it was tough because we didn't have any help out there. And so it was difficult, like if you needed a babysitter or something came up, especially with my job, because I'm, all over the place and some days they're pretty crazy. So I would say if you're buying something for a family, you may want to consider, or you probably strongly want to consider being close to family that if you're going to, need that babysitter or someone that can help take care of your kids, that you're not, an hour away or an hour and a half away, which is difficult with the home prices, but that's something I would consider. Or if you have parents that are in in a home that they may not need that much longer because it's hard for them to maintain, then you can look at an option that maybe you buy with your parents, and they can, live with you like how I have in my house, for example. And, pros and cons, obviously you have to work those things out, but we found it's been quite helpful overall.
I do have to echo that sentiment. I know that it didn't seem that it was that big of a deal when I first got married, living close to in-laws. But I guess you don't think of it. You get married, and then you take care of your babies, and then all of a sudden, it's time to go back to work. Who watches those children? And
Right.
daycare is whatever, 1,300 a month per child. Like that'll really, really, really stagnate your investment life. $1,300, and that's per child. And then
Yeah.
people are also saying, well, why don't I not go back to work? So what I found is that if you could lean on family, and you know if family's an hour away, they might say, oh, I'll pull in a day or two. Whereas if they're 2 blocks away, they're
Right.
like, oh, you could lean on me, 4 days a week, or I could do half a day, and then maybe you could. So I've seen all of these different scenarios where people are saving so much money just because they're getting a supportive family. And I also agree as well. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet, and,
Yeah.
and combine a home. I'm in a situation where we're in a home, and the only way that I would upgrade this home is if there was a combination between myself and my in-laws, which we are exploring. But at my stage of life, taking on another million of mortgage just doesn't make sense. But at
Exactly.
the same time, that's kind of the reality of an upgrade.
Yeah.
When you're jumping from one to another, like even townhouse to house has got to be at least half a mil.
Yeah. It's
And
a pretty big
that's
jump.
big. Yeah, so I think that's some great advice. Stay as close to family as possible. There's so many practicalities for it. Now, if people don't have family at all near it, then my advice would be to think about staying in the area that you eventually want to live in. So if you said, I really, really want to live in Vancouver and I want to raise my kids in Vancouver, I want to do everything in Vancouver, but maybe I'll start out in Langley and then I'll eventually move to Vancouver. The one tricky thing there is, sometimes the markets move differently.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to get back into that market. I would almost say sacrifice and go smaller, and then upgrade slowly into the market and just live essentially where you want to live, especially if you can stay in the area, because then you start to develop roots there. So switching from a far place into I've always found is a little bit harder than maybe being in a neighborhood and then upgrading 4 blocks down into an upper neighborhood, into an upper product a few years later. So it seems to be easier to do that.
Yeah, it's a good point. And some of the stuff, I just to kind of touch on that, we've been seeing quite a few clients have moved to the Fraser Valley the last couple of years because the prices, obviously you can get more space than Vancouver. But a lot of our clients are getting called back to work 2, 3, 4 times a week. So you kind of have to factor that in, that this sort of working from home environment is going to change for a lot of the employers. So some of these guys are now in their car 3 hours a day. So yeah, you kind of have to factor, where you're going to be working for the long term as well. And, how much time are you going to be spending commuting? Maybe you're getting more farther out, but if you're having to drive to work, 3 hours a day, that's a factor as well.
No, that's great. That's great. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
So from budget planning, I've offered my Excel budget sheet, which I give to clients. And if anyone hasn't gotten it, but they'd like it at the end, you can absolutely try to get it from me. Just ask for it. And I think the best thing to do is to do some cash flow planning before you buy a house. Figure out the mortgage rate, figure out how much expenses that you live off currently between restaurants and, savings and entertainment, things of that sort. And then the nice thing about my sheet, it figures out your income ratio for you. Yeah. And so cash flow planning, I think, is incredibly, incredibly important. Don't just sort of guess it out. Otherwise, you might be incredibly surprised. Some advice for some down payment options. I've seen this, and I encourage clients to do this. If you can get into a home within a year versus 5 years, then I would say do it. the amount of equity that you're losing, and the prices that keep going up. So some ways to get into a market a little bit faster. Think about just asking family, for a loan or an early inheritance. Think about maybe minimizing your the payback on your loans. I've got some clients who are dentists, $300,000 of debt, probably take them 6-7 years to pay it off, or they minimize it. Maybe it takes them 10 years to pay it off, but they're able to buy their home within, a year to get that down payment, 5% down payment. Excuse me. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that as very common right now, especially the last couple of years with the home prices. Lots of clients are getting, like you said, early inheritance or gift letters. So I think that's good. As long as you sort of have that talk on expectations, obviously, like, are you expected to pay it back? Is is it a gift? Is it early inheritance? Because I've seen some stuff where sort of backfired where people thought it was a gift and then they're sort of asked to pay it back. But definitely we're seeing that on probably every other deal, just with what prices are, where prices are at.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, get discipline. Incorporate a down payment strategy. Don't just say, well, at the end of the year, let's see how much money I have left over, and that'll be my down payment. It's more about, if you're putting 1,000 a month or 2,000 a month, and you just get aggressive. And I mentioned this on my last talk. If it's a sacrifice for sure, but if you could live with family while you're a young couple and maybe just bite the bullet, he says, well, we make $150,000 between the two incomes. So we could easily afford a very, very nice place. Yeah, I know you can. But if family is offering, you might be able to have a down payment within 8 months, within a year. Just have to sacrifice a little bit up front and then get that down payment and get in that home right away. Okay. Should a young couple rent or buy when starting out? So I want to talk about priorities. So the quick answer is there is no right or wrong answer. It's more of what is your greatest priority. And, if you really, really, really want to pay down loans, or maybe you're at a spot in life where you want to upgrade your education, you know, then I would say that getting a home might not be the right priority and you might need to rent. But my one thing is this: if you are going to rent, try to minimize the rent so that you could still save up. So that means, yes, you might, you could afford to live on just you two as a couple, but maybe you take on some roommates, or maybe you'd love that 2-bedroom, but maybe you only rent a 1-bedroom, or you'd love that condo downtown Yaletown, or maybe you just rent that basement suite out in Burnaby, anything to keep cash flow strong so that you could save up. So I always say to aggressively save. I'm also a believer of prioritizing your home over your retirement. And what I mean by that, if you said I could maximize my RSPs or I can go maximize my down payment, I would say maximize my down payment. Now, you can use your RSPs for a down payment. That's a separate conversation. But I think that some people, they said, oh, you'd be so proud. I've maxed out my RSPs. I still rent, and it's 10 years later, but I've got $150,000 in my RSP account now. But I'm like, yeah, over 10 years, you're probably $500,000 down in equity from the home that you could have bought, which is 100% tax free, in your retirement if you were ever to downsize. So again, there's some cash flow planning to be done there. And then, there was a CTV report that was done a few years back, but I think its message still holds true. And they said, the experts were asked, and these were professors from UBC and all these different experts. They said, hey, should you buy or should you rent here in Vancouver? And their answer was, if you have savings and a good job, a stable job, you got a down payment, you should buy. He says, oh, but aren't we overinflated? We might go down. And we're experiencing this now. We're down about 10%. They says, yeah, but in the long term, we're always back up. If anything, pounce when we're 10% down and go buy, especially because a year from now, your income will probably be the same, but that house might be another $100,000, or $200,000. So this is a tough one. Ideally, try to budget no more than 40% of monthly gross income towards your housing. If you were to do the math really quickly, you'll realize, let's say a couple making, let's say between the two of them, let's say makes a $200,000 of income, 40% of their monthly income is still probably only a condo, It's still probably only a condo when you factor in mortgage, strata, property taxes. But we want to leave enough, we want to leave enough so that there's enough room to continue to invest, continue to do other things over here. Okay. So, what about investment real estate? And I know some people aren't quite at that stage yet, but I'll just glance over it. Is buying investment real estate a good idea with today's prices? My quick answer is always you have to look at the capital appreciation and the cash flow, the two together. And if I was to pick one, I would say it is the cash flow that you want to look at first. Okay. So we know that they're all going to appreciate, but by how much? I know some people have gotten very, very lucky. They have bought things like a pre-construction, and the pre-construction, they buy it 2 years later, they make 80 grand, and they never even owned it. That's true. It might happen. But the only thing is you got to be prepared. What if you can't sell it? What if you only put 20% down? What if it only rents for 3 grand a month, for example? And let's say that you're on the hook for the other, 6% interest rate on some $600,000 mortgage, right? You got to do the math. And if you can't do the math, you got to get someone to help you to do the math over here. Ryan, what's the environment of the pre-construction looking like these days?
You know what? It seems busy again. I have 2 accepted offers for pre-sales this week. So I think a lot of people are kind of hedging their bets that the time these projects close, like a lot of them are 2025, 2026, that the rates will be back down. And pre-sales are good because you don't have to qualify at today's rate. So as long as you have in most cases, 20% down payment or deposit, you can buy a pre-sale. They're not going to check your financing, although you should still talk to a broker to make sure you're okay. But yeah, we're starting to see an uptick there for sure. And you kind of touched on it. It's very important to make sure that you can close on the product that you buy. A lot of people buy pre-sales, they pay their down payment, and then they forget, not forget, but it comes up very quickly and their job situation changes or life changes. So you have to make sure that if you buy a pre-sale, hopefully it increases in value, but be prepared to close on it.
Ryan, do you think that there's going to be some opportunities in the pre-sale market this year, like buildings that are closing, where people, 3 years ago, they were expecting the rates to be at 2%, 2.5%, and now they got to close at 6%. Do you think there's going to be some deals out there?
Yeah, there should be. We've kind of been talking about this for a while. So there is a lot closing this year. I mean, for example, I have one pre-sale that I bought at the city of Lougheed almost 7 years ago, and it's finally closing this summer. But I know, there's some clients that bought in that project where their situation has changed. So I think so. Yeah, I think some of the people that won't be able to close on the pre-sale are going to have to try to find someone else to sell it to or to get alternative financing.
What might that look like, Ryan? Can they reassign it? What if they're taking a bit of a loss?
Yeah, it really depends. So most of the builders will allow you to assign your contract, usually for a fee, and that could be anywhere from 2 to 3%. The ones that I have accepted this week, they have a 3% fee in there to the builder. So most cases, at the end of the day, the builder just wants to get what they had on contract. So they probably will allow you to assign it for a fee. But it really depends when you bought it. I mean, in most cases, if you bought it several years ago, you're probably asking for your deposit back plus the increase in value. But if you're not able to get rid of it, then it's going to start coming down to you just trying to get rid of or get back portion of your deposit. So it really depends on when you bought it and how the market's doing. But some people may end up losing a portion of their initial investment.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's why when people are looking at this, you want to work with professionals that can help to guide you. And when it comes to investment real estate, I believe that Vancouver does do well, but I think the cash flows are tough to do. You could make anything cash flow. You just need a larger down payment. But if you don't have 40% down that you want to put down, then sometimes you might need to look elsewhere. And that's one of the advantages of my practice is that we look outside of Vancouver as well. So Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and we look for cash flowing investment properties. And this one over here is a $220,000 condo, and it can get $1,700 a month in rent. And what we do is when we analyze it, what is the cash flow? Now, the capital appreciation is going to be much lower, but we'll factor that in. And then we'll try to look to see, okay, is this still a good investment? And the internal rate of return on this is 13%. So stock market typically can't get you 13% guaranteed over 20 years. This basic investment over here, based off of your deposit, should be able to get that. So what we always say is, if you're an investor and you want to invest in real estate, but maybe Vancouver is a little bit too expensive, but you still would like to put some money to work in equity, we always say, come and talk to us, and then we'll explore what that might look like as well.
Just a note, I was going to mention this for the people listening. So just today, I got this from a company called High Street that I know that you use.
Yeah.
So Langley, for example, because they have the movie studios there, and they're opening a new movie studios, plus the insurance claims, they are actually, this is after the company's fee. So they do corporate rentals and insurance claims. They pay $7,200 a month for 4-bedroom townhomes, which my guys have an offer right now for $850. So it's pretty good. I haven't done all the numbers. I just got this today, but they would get $7,200 gross a month, and that's after the company's fees.
Wow, because of the
Yeah,
because of the demand on the wow.
because of the demand. Yeah, so there's a lot of people that moved out there just in general, but then they also have the infrastructure. There's a movie studio. There's another one coming. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. I just got that today, so I thought I'd share it. That's pretty good.
No, that's wonderful. So because it's so hard to make anything cash flow here, we have to start thinking outside of the box. And I know you, Ryan, have also been working with me and clients, just trying to say, maybe let's consider Airbnbs, and
Yeah,
know which buildings allow Airbnbs in
yeah,
Vancouver. And so myself working with my clients, I could figure out, do the numbers work? Do the numbers work if we're looking for investment? And you got to remember, one way to think of the investment might be, I really want to buy here in Vancouver.
right.
But what I could buy, I don't want to live in. Maybe you rent in a, 3-bedroom townhouse that is rent controlled and you don't want to give that up. But at the same time, you really, really, really have a deposit and you're able to buy something. Something like this might be that option, something that actually does potentially cash flow, something that's gaining, lower mainland equity. Yeah, so here I use this case example whenever I deal with a client. This is a great case example of the types of clients I deal with. They're newly married, they both own a condo, they want to start a family, but they don't know what to do with their 2 condos. They could sell both and then upgrade to a townhome or a house. They could keep one as a rental and sell the other one as a down payment. Or potentially they could sell one, continue to rent, and reinvest elsewhere. And I think for a lot of people, they just cannot figure these things out on their own. And that's where I come in. Me and my team would come in and we would do a cost benefit analysis to figure out which is their best option. What is the best option that they can do when when we're looking at this. And one of the things we help to advise our clients on is, what does this look like if in retirement? What does this look like, in 20 years from now, if you were to make this type of a move? And what we realize is that we're adding an enormous amount of value for a decision they have to make in the here and now, but it could literally be the difference of millions in the future. All right. So now let's take a look at this. How can a young family budget plan if they have, they can pay down high debts, they can invest, and they typically spend what's left over. And that over here is very, very typical. Let's pay down the debts, let's do a little bit of investing, and let's spend what's left over. That over there is probably the best formula. Now, what happens often is it's mixed up. So usually a young family will spend, then they'll pay their debts, and then if there's anything left over, that's what they invest with. And that over there is not great planning. So we always recommend is to figure out, what is your target? How much is it that you actually want to end up with? and what is the amount that are you on track for retirement, so here is a very loose budget, with somebody with high loans, someone with high loans. So it's based off $100,000 income, and there's about $70,000 net that this person will receive. So think of this as a household. So it could be one person making all the income, or two people, or this could just be based off of one person. Then I would say this person housing, about 20% only 20% should go towards housing. Okay. But look at how aggressive I am on the debt, 35%. So almost $2,000 a month is going towards the debt and we're talking like high interest credit cards, maybe loans, things of that sort. So to get really, really, really aggressive with this, really aggressive. And, if you've got a partner who maybe they can contribute to the housing as well, but this will help you to really, really clobber those loans. Now, what will happen when the loans are gone? Well, now we could look at, bumping up the housing like to 40%. So now 40% of income is going to housing. Now, at this point, I believe they should not be renting. So if we're putting 40% of our income towards housing, you should have home ownership. But this formula over here still leaves 10% for investments, still 10, and some money for charity as well. So I think if you're not organized, you're never going to figure this stuff out. So what you got to do is you got to forecast cash flow. You gotta make a budget so you can see how much you could actually afford. Okay, how can you financially prepare for having kids? Okay, so this over here is another big one. So I've always said to stress test your finances. That's the first step. Stress test your finances. What I mean by that is to think about the expenses that are coming up ahead. Okay, so you would first do your personal cash flow. So once you do your personal cash flow, you would say how much is going towards, how much is going towards our income, how much is going towards our expenses, how much is going towards our debts, and then see how much you still have left. Then what you do is you redo this number once you have a mortgage, once you're on maternity leave, and then you take a look to see how am I in the negative? And if the answer is that you're in the negative, you now have to accommodate to that negative and figure out how we're going to do the shortfall. One of the answers might be like some deep cuts, maybe go to one car, maybe, potentially don't buy so much home to begin with before, but you don't want to get caught off guard on a maternity leave. I'm dealing with one family client, and 2 summers in a row, they've come up short. 2 summers in a row, I guess. They kind of live paycheck to paycheck, but then they don't make anything closer to the summer. So at the end of summer, they're always about 10 grand short. And so each year they're struggling to make up this $10,000 in credit card debt, this $10,000 in back pay, this $10,000. And so far where they've been coming up with this $10,000 is going to ask for family. And I thought, your family's giving you a hand because you've got a young child, but when is the bleeding going to stop? Like, what in your finances has changed that at the end of this next year, you won't be a $10,000 short? And their answer is, oh, we're hoping, we're trying to save, we're trying not to spend so much. Well, hope is not a strategy. Like they don't know their budget. And just speaking with them, they spend way too much on food and groceries, way, way, way too much, because they also don't have any budget planning when they go to the grocery store. So when they go to the grocery store, they just sort of buy. They're not any sort of budget. And of course, they're so stressed out from work that, on Friday night, they want to just unwind and hit a restaurant. And then they're so stressed out at the end of spring break, they go on a quick vacation, and they're not even expensive vacations. At the end, they're not even that expensive. They're just local vacations. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They're minus 10 grand each year, and there's no end in sight. There's no planning involved, right? And so with maternity leave, so what you want to do is you want to project out what will 2025 look like, whatever the mat year is going to look like, whatever the baby years are going to look like. If you're partial income, what are those years going to look like? Because last thing you need when you've got that new bundle of joy is to be stressed out of your eyeballs. You'll be stressed out of your eyeballs for other reasons. Last thing you want to be stressed out of your eyeballs for financial reasons, So what are some other things that we got to think about to prepare for when that baby comes? Well, here's some 3 easy ones. Are you doing daycare or not? Daycare is $1,300 a month. So you have to build that into your budget if you're doing that. You have to figure out where that shortfall is going to come from, right? If you could stay close to the family and not do daycare, fantastic, right? But that's one thing. The other thing you got to do is you got to, you got to review your insurance. So, our financial practice, we could do a review over the phone, on Zoom. So your most important insurance is probably your life insurance, your disability insurance. Those are the two first that you got to look at. Housing location. Where is it that you're going to move to, in order to be, whether it be close proximity to family, whether it be close proximity to work. So once the baby, like my wife and I, as soon as she got pregnant, we moved back on the North Shore. We knew that's where eventually we wanted to end up. So we didn't continue to rent. And we didn't continue to stay in Vancouver because once that baby comes, it'll be harder to make all those movements. So we did a lot of planning that way. So I want to talk about insurance really quickly. What is the most important insurance to put in place for a young family? And it'll depend on the stage of life that you're in. So if you were single, your disability is the most important. Then probably critical illness and other living benefit, then life. But once you're married and you're projected to have kids and mortgage, life insurance is actually the most important one. That one, it goes to the top of the list. Then disability, then critical illness. Now, the good news is oftentimes work covers you for some of these, but sometimes it doesn't cover you for enough, or you're self-employed and you don't have any of it. So what you want to do is you want to do an insurance review. Right away, you want to do an insurance review. So whenever we do an insurance review, we always look at it from an actuarial perspective, and we figure out what is the risk associated with the life insurance, the disability, and the critical illness, both on the male and the female. And then we calculate what is your debt load, right? What is your debt load? So because of your debt load, what is your need over time? You don't want to be leaving. You don't want to leave the surviving spouse with a huge headache because you were underinsured. We'll do an insurance needs analysis based off of their income, based off of their debts, and then what we'll do is we'll say, this is what we recommend, this is what you currently have through work or personally, and this is where your shortfall is. That's what our insurance review looks like. And then of course we work with all the major insurance carriers. We would look to see what is the best valued insurance mixed with which one has the best rates. So there's 3 things moving in the wrong direction, which is why you should always prioritize your insurance when you're young. Your age, as you get older, it gets more expensive. Your health, as you get older, you get not as healthy. And the insurance rates, they keep going up. 1 in 4 policies are non-standard. 1 in 4 policies are not standard. I always recommend that young people start with a term insurance plan. It's inexpensive. You could always convert it later. And so, like I said, if you wanted an insurance review, me and my team would be happy to give you one. So now most people are a little bit too young to be thinking about retirement, but that's the best time to be thinking about retirement, right? Are you on track for retirement? So the way we do retirement planning is we take a look and we take an account. Will you own your home? Will you have RSPs or pension? What will your debt load be? And are you open to the idea of downsizing? Okay, because if you're open to the idea of downsizing, you actually typically don't have to save as much for retirement. And then what are your plans in retirement? Typically we have people have 3 stages of retirement. First stage is they're still fairly they're a young retiree, so they're healthy enough to travel. So it's actually a very expensive time because they're doing a lot of traveling, a lot of, European vacations, cruises. Then after that stage in their 70s, they tend to settle down. They've got their retirement. They're slowing down a little bit. So it's actually less expensive. But then there's a big spike near the tail end, and that's usually because of a long-term care. Long-term care can be very, very expensive, $10,000 a month to care for you. So usually what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's enough money at each of those stages. And so our planning takes into account all of the different assets that you have. And then we take a look at your scenario. And then we say, are you on track for retirement? and then our data will let us know whether you're susceptible to running short of money or not, or whether you're on track for retirement. Now, the good news is if you're not on track for retirement, we can always make adjustments to figure out how to get you on track. There's all of the different places, everything from, more savings, more rates of return, a little bit less spending. And then what we want to do is we want you to feel confident that you are on track for retirement. So I want to leave enough time for questions, but I want to talk about using a financial advisor. Should you be using a financial advisor? And the quick answer is not everybody needs one. Not everybody needs one, but the majority of people do. Majority of people do. Some people don't need one, but the majority of people do. But I think what you want to do is you want to get the right advisor, the one that whose services align with your goals. So if you said, "Oh, I want to invest in real estate," then probably going to a bank advisor is the wrong advisor, because they're not really going to help in that area. They're going to help you with your RSPs and TFSAs, but they're not going to help you invest in real estate. They're not going to analyze. They're not going to do all of these different things. So what you want to do with an advisor is try to figure out, well, what can't you do on your own? What can't you do on your own? And where is the value that an advisor is helping me? So if you can't invest in certain things on your own because you don't know what you're doing, then you might need an advisor. If you can't find cash flowing real estate, outside of your backyard, then maybe you need an advisor that specializes in that. So I would say the majority of people need one, but you want to look for fit. Little statistic over here, using the right advisor versus doing it yourself typically could be almost 3 times the wealth over the cycle of 15 years, 3 times. And I know the clients that I've worked with, will speak to that when they say, Christian, when we first started working together 8 years ago, I was planning on buying my home within 5 years, and you showed me a route to do it in 1. Or there was a piece of real estate, that you helped me to find and to buy, and it's up $300,000. My RSPs and TFSAs are up 60, and I put in about the same amount of money. But that's what I mean about having the right advisor. A lot of clients that we attract are people who enjoy real estate, especially buying real estate, whether it be their own personal property or investing in more. People who are incorporated. We deal with a lot of professionals who are incorporated because the taxation incorporation is a lot trickier. Physicians, dentists, lawyers, and of course, anybody who has got cash flow. They're good savers and they have cash flow, and they're trying to figure out highest and best usage of that cash flow. And they just don't want to stick everything into the stock market. You want to stick everything in the stock market, you don't really need me. Right? You have Quest Trade, you've got all these different versions of that. But really, when somebody wants to diversify into some of the other things that are out there, that's where me and my team come in really, really well. A traditional portfolio, here's $150,000. They do an 80-20 split on stocks and bonds. And the type of return that they're going to get, about 7%. Historically, they're going to get a 7% return. But the issue is there's a lot of volatility. The standard deviation is 13%. And right now, stock market is down like 14%. Last year was down 18%, right? Sometimes they can't handle that volatility. So our allocation is a little bit different. We've always stayed above the standard S&P 500. And this would be a sample of our allocation. And one of the reasons why, we believe in real estate, as a portion of our portfolio. So real estate isn't correlated. It isn't correlated to the stock market. So usually it helps to lower volatility while not giving up any gains. So here, stock market was down over 20% last year. It's down over 12% at this time. Some people just don't like all that volatility. So one of our core portfolios over here, when the stock market was down 14%, we were up 6%. And up 6%, that's not too bad. But the beautiful thing about that is it's not down. With our private investments, which majority of people don't have access to, we were up 11. We were up 11 when the rest of the market was down. And we've had a great run in the last 10 years. And these passive investments are actually RSP and TFSA eligible. RSP and TFSA eligible. So a lot of people can't find these types of investments on their own. They're not subject to the stock market. So what does our process look like? Our process starts with a discovery meeting. Or so if you ever want to take a discovery meeting with me and my team and said, hey, is there a fit? Well, there's no charge to take a discovery meeting. If there is a fit, great. If there's not a fit, then we'll try to just give you as much information as we possibly can. So my clients, the way they utilize me, oftentimes, like I said, there's usually a real estate question on the table. And that's where me and my team sort of specialize in, whether it be your own personal property or whether it be an investment property. Then there's everything else from, core portfolio, their RSPs and TFSA, seeing if there's any tax inefficiency, of course, an insurance review, seeing if they're on track for retirement. So this is an area that we often get involved with. So right now, if there's any questions, I invite you guys to put it in the chat. Please put it in the chat, and then Ryan and I would be happy to field any questions that happen to be out there. So as you formulate those questions, my team and I, we're always doing different events as well that we're inviting people to. We're having a women's investors education night. We have a women's division now, which is very, very exciting. We're trying to help people females to learn more about investing, bring some friends along. And this is actually next week on February 28th. If you were interested, you would register with my assistant at latitude-west.ca. And she would let you know where it is. It's in Yaletown. We're going to have wine. We're going to have some food. And then we're going to play a little game, so a little games night. But we're going to have a couple of speakers that are going to talk on investing in with women. If you'd rather go with your partner, we're doing it again at the end of March. Still fire an email off to my assistant and just say, oh, you're interested in the wine and games night with investor education, but you would like to do it with your partner at the end of March. So either way, I will be one of the speakers there, and my team will be there. One of the exciting things that we're doing. Okay, so questions. Last call for questions. Okay, I think we've got a hand raised. Was there a question? Is it Rudolph? Rudolph, did you have a question?
Hey, Christian. Yeah. So two questions. I guess the first one is the quicker one. Will this workshop recording be sent out to us?
Yes. This recording will be sent out, and we invite you to forward it to any friends or family that thinks that they might have some value with it.
Awesome. Perfect, because my fiance wasn't able to come in tonight.
Sure.
Together. If we were to rent, let's say, for various reasons, should the savings that we have, should we purchase pre-sale and wait for that pre-sale to kind of finish? Or if we do have the down payment for a house that we are not necessarily like dreaming of, but something that we are kind of okay with in that time, should we pull the trigger on that instead?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have an answer, but Ryan, I'm going to let you go first on that one.
Yeah, you know what? It really depends. So we would have to kind of look at, what do you qualify for? Then I can give you a better idea of some options. I think pre-sale, though, just off top of my head, there's some decent projects right now. So that is good in a sense, because you're just paying, the down payment, which is usually 20% over several months or a year. And then you don't have to worry about it for 3 or 5 years, whereas the home obviously is going to expect more costs up front. But I'd have to kind of look at your situation in more detail.
Yeah, I guess with me, a pre-sale is going to be nice. It's going to be fancy. And then existing home, the one thing about existing places is it's sort of ready right away. And you'll understand, you can inspect it, you get into it right away. You don't have to, as soon as you put that money in, 2 months later, you're actually in the property. I think the one question is the place that you might be able to get sooner. Can you see yourself living there longer? And the reason why I say that, some people are like, oh, we're just going to live in this place, but I don't really like it, but at least I can get it, and we'll get out of here within 2 or 3 years. And then it's expensive to move, the transfer costs, and then often finds, and then living in a place that was maybe in the wrong neighborhood, or it was a bit of a junky place. then it could add some friction. Like I know people that have bought places and they didn't even like the place. It's just that they were in that heated market. They got beat out 6 times. They just bought something. It was 1 bedroom short than what they wanted. So they said, we'll pair up the kids and they'll just have to suck it up for a couple of years. And there was nothing but fighting. They were dying to get the hell out of there. Where if they literally would have waited just a little bit longer, but some people get in this frenzy. When times are bad, everybody thinks they're going to be bad forever. And when times are good, people think they're going to be good forever. I think find the home that you like. Find the home that you like. And if you're comfortable with the pre-sale and you like the layout, you like you know what you're getting, then I would say, that's why there's no right pre-sale yes or pre-sale no. It's everyone's scenario is a little bit different.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Was there any other questions? Any other questions out there? I think I'll put this one up. If anyone wanted to connect with Ryan, I know Ryan and I have been working together for a very long time. He's helped out many of my clients, and he's a gentle touch, I like to say. He's not going to pressure you into getting something. I know that one client that I, paired him up with, I think 2 years of showing, and he finally found the right product, and I said, and he had nothing but great things to say about Ryan, because he says, you know what, he's going to find me the right place, not the first place. So I can't say enough about him. And for myself, we're pretty we're also a gentle touch here at Latitude West. We want to accommodate and answer your exact needs, whether it might not be any investing at all. Maybe you just need help with figuring out your housing situation or your debt situation, whatever it happens to be. So we do encourage that you reach out if you did want to talk. If there are no other questions, then we'll slowly wrap this up over here. Like I said, if you did want to come to the Women's Investor Education Wine Night, give us an email. If you want to bring friends, absolutely allowed. But if you wanted to go with your partner, then we're having it again in March, and just let us know which one you're more interested in. But it's just the promotion of education. It's just the promotion of learning to invest, just the promotion of, collaborating with some professional speakers as to, more Q&A. So more education is always better than less education. But again, if you want to reach out to me, assistant at latitude-west.ca, and Ryan at rwrealestate.ca. So I'm going to sign off over here, and I thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Christian.